You can cook, you can take a shower, you can watch TV, and by God, you can hang a left if you feel like it. Hello, huge movie fanatic Nate, stopping on by, returning once again for one of my famed movie/Blu-ray reviews. Today I'm going to be reviewing one of my favorite movies of all time, and the most recently reviewed Blu-ray of it by the name of Terror Train. I'll be talking about the movie kind of for its 40th anniversary celebration, and then I'll be reviewing the most recent Blu-ray release of it by Scorpion Releasing that came out, I don't know, was it towards the end of 2019, I think? Scorpion Releasing with its goofy ass purple mist haze floating through the newly commissioned artwork. But that's the newly released or most recently released Blu-ray of Terror Train. My history with Terror Train goes back to, like, I don't know, 1988 or 89, when I was not even a teenager yet. That's right when I was getting into horror movies. There was this program on, this show on TV, I don't know if it was a half hour or an hour long, where they just showed, it was like a movie that was like celebrating horror movies, or you know kind of contemporary horror movies or whatever, if you will, or whatever. And it's just like they showed clips from like Rosemary's Baby, Brian De Palma's Carrie, My Bloody Valentine, Terror Train, I don't know, probably others as well. And that was like some of the first times I'd ever seen any clips from these movies. And it was just, obviously at the same, it was really kind of interesting how that show was on at that, at that time in my life, because I was like just getting into horror movies at that time, as it was anyway. And it was just like, wow, it was just really, it was almost like that show, or that whatever the hell it was, that hour-long special just talking about horror movies and showing clips from them, was like made for me. Like, here you go, Nate. We know you're just getting into horror movies. Here's some clips from movies that you're going to go on to absolutely love, like My Bloody Valentine and Terror Train. And I don't necessarily really love Carrie, but Rosemary's Baby is really great, but it's not something that I watch very often. But it was just so weird, and still to this day I don't understand. I guess it was just a different era. I just don't understand what this program was, or who really benefited from it airing or whatever. But just like everything else, I guess it had ads or whatever, and they could figure they could sell ads for showing this TV show, whatever. But that was my first, and a glimpse into the world of Terror Train. And what it showed, I think, primarily was the end battle between Kenny Hampson and Jamie Lee Curtis in in that one car. It showed like a lot, if not, the majority of that scene in that car, where it's like all bloody, his hands all bloody, and he's like trying to strangle Jamie Lee Curtis and pulling out the earring and all that stuff, where she traps herself or locks herself in that room and stuff. It showed like the majority, if not all, of that scene, and I was just like, wow, this movie is just so nasty and gritty and grimy. So I wouldn't actually see the whole movie until I was 15, and I absolutely loved it from the very beginning, from the very first time I saw it, and still all these years later still think it's absolutely freaking amazing. It's one of my favorite horror movies, but it's also just one of my favorite movies in general. And it should also be said that this is like, movies have never really scared me per se. Like Stanley Kubrick's Shining is a movie that actually, as a kid, I saw that for the first time when I was 12. That movie, because of just Stanley Kubrick being a master filmmaker, that movie, because of its creepy imagery, and again, music plays a big part in a movie for me to actually have a movie like, kind of creep me out or scare me. The Shining and Terror Train are a couple of the only really movies that have ever really scared me / creeped me out. And the same thing with the reason The Shining creeped me out or scared me is the same reason. And it's really funny because you've got the same director of photography who shot both movies. And what's really interesting is that probably plays a huge part in it, because just the really dark towards the end of the movie, when everything's hitting the fan and stuff, and the characters are all worried about a killer and stuff. During the end of the movie, when you've got so many dark, just really claustrophobic train, rail cars, and it's just really creepy. But another thing that really creeps me out about this movie, not so much now, but when I first saw it and stuff, is the music. The music is really, really, really just really, really great in this movie, and really creeps me out. I mean, still to this day, to an extent, the music in this movie I think is really, really top-notch stuff. And they just, like I say, I mean, they don't make movies like this anymore. This is just so freaking awesome. And it's so weird, at this late stage of the game, having this movie been a part of my life for so long, even talking about the plot. But since I'm doing a movie review, and maybe you haven't seen it, I will just basically do a brief review of the movie, which is it's really cool how it starts in the cliched late 70s, early 80s fashion, where it starts with the incident, which is the cause of the rest of the movie's, the killer doing what the killer does throughout the rest of the movie, where you've got this, this fraternity New Year's Eve celebration or whatever. And that's another thing I want to mention. Being a Minnesotan, I really, really appreciate it. It's one of these movies that I watched being an anal bastard in the winter, of course, because this was shot in Canada during a bitterly cold winter itself, and it's just so evident that it's actually real winter and it's real cold winter, and it's just something I love about it. There's not a whole hell of a lot of winter movies that I really, really love that I watch. For example, I think I've watched this like 3 times this past winter. And it's just like, this is just one of those movies that every winter it comes out and just continues to be played and played and played, several times throughout the course of, basically every winter. But the movie starts with this prank played on this kind of skinny geek guy by the name of Kenny Hampson, where they're basically, this guy's got the hots for Elena, played by Jamie Lee Curtis, of course, and this is a sorority, or not a sorority, but a fraternity prank they play on him, and they play it on Elena too, because they're kind of both caught off guard. I mean, Kenny Hampson very much more so, caught off guard by this, where they, basically these are medical students or pre-medicals, these students, the main characters of this movie, and the asshole fraternity guys that play the prank on Kenny Hampson are like these pre-med students. So one of the characters actually has access to a morgue or whatever, and got this really, 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 I can remember watching this for the first time I ever saw it. I watched it, me and my dad rented it, and when the scene happens, when Kenny Hampson goes in there, and Jamie Lee Curtis is like behind the bed, and they've got this corpse, in pieces all kind of set up, sitting up in the bed, and Jamie Lee Curtis' character doesn't know that it's a corpse. She just thinks it's some person posing. Of course, I don't know, you'd probably be able to smell it or whatever, but that's besides the point. So, she's like talking to Kenny Hampson from behind the bed, like, oh, don't be shy, it's my first time too, and gets Kenny Hampson to take off his clothes and just be in underwear and tank top or whatever, and he goes to touch her, and again, as soon as you touch her arm, you should know that this is a corpse, but whatever. He grabs her, and like the body falls back and the arms fall off, and there's like a wig on it, and it's just like my dad was like, oh, that kind of grossed my dad out when we watched it. And the way the movie opens is probably one of the more shocking openings for a horror movie or a movie in general. You don't really expect a movie to go there that soon into the movie, and when that body falls back and the music starts, it's just like, in Kenny Hampton's reaction, like he's like and starts spinning, and gets all tangled up in the the bed stuff or whatever, and the music's going like crazy, and Jamie Lee Curtis' character comes out from behind the bed and sees that it's a corpse, and she's getting all shocked, and Kenny's all shocked, and the assholes come in laughing, and it's just like, oh my god, that opening. Even now, it still gets me. And what's so great about the guy who shot the movie, the director of photography, is John Alcott, who had done several Stanley Kubrick movies. You got like Barry Lyndon, and I don't know if he did Clockwork Orange or not, but he did like Barry Lyndon and The Shining and stuff. Possibly Clockwork Orange, I'm not exactly sure. But this is a guy who is really well, obviously, feels really well at home shooting with more or less available light, and I really, really love Stanley Kubrick's, the way his movies look, and a lot of it's due to, or at least in the glory years of like mid to late 70s and early 80s of Stanley Kubrick's career, a lot of the way his movies look are in big part due to John Alcott. It was just amazing that for whatever reason they were able to get that guy to shoot this movie. Is one of the reasons I love the movie so much, and it's one of my favorite movies, is that it just looks, it's probably one of the best looking slasher movies ever made as a result of that. It's just absolutely amazing. And what I was saying about that is the opening scene, the way it's lit, where in this fraternity they have just all these like road blinky lights and stuff, just blinking all over the place, and it's just really, really low light, and even the bedroom where they play the prank on Kenny, just the Christmas lights on the wall, and it looks so freaking beautiful, and on Blu-ray it looks really, really great. And it's just a movie that looks really great. So I'm going to try my best not to do a beat by beat, but after that scene, it's just horrific, horror-filled, horror vision scene. It's kind of slow-mos, you know, Kenny Hampson's like slow-mos them down, and it goes into opening credits where you see this, you know, this door open and the train pull out of the, you know, whatever, wherever the train's kept or whatever, and the music in the opening credits, oh my gosh, I absolutely love it. So the main premise of this movie after the prank is like, you know, that was probably when they just started college, and now it's 4 years later where they're like getting out of college or whatever. So it's 4 years later on New Year's Eve, I think. Isn't it New Year's Eve again, or somewhere close to New Year's Eve? I don't remember. Maybe I'm getting confused with Trading Places. I don't know. I think it's really close to New Year's Eve. It might not be December 31st, but whatever. It's winter, 4 years later, and the whole thing is they're doing this like graduation or pre-graduation party where one of these characters, you know, rented out this old train for like a steam train excursion, you know, for a big, huge, you know, basically last big party of their college years or whatever, and you know, all the asshole guys that pulled the prank on Kenny Hampson and their girlfriends are all there, and you know, a big part of their class or whatever takes this steam train excursion out, and of course we have a mysterious guest that joins the train, and it's really cool how you know, they off one of the characters right at the beginning before they even, or when they're all getting on the train, and he stabs him with the sword through the stomach and then tosses him on the train track. Unfortunately, well, it's kind of classy the way they pull it off, but you know, nowadays you'd probably see the body get, you know, freaking cut in half by K&B effects, or probably even worse, probably digital. They probably do digital gore nowadays to show the body being cut in half. But it's really cool, nasty how, you know, the killer kills someone before the train, you know, departs and puts him on the train track, and just, you know, the movie just, you know, basically hints at the fact that, you know, obviously the body is damaged a lot, you know, cut in half or cut to pieces or whatever by, you know, when the train goes. We don't see it, but it's implied. Another thing that's really fun about this movie, I think it's like during the, you know, at the beginning of David Copperfield's big, huge, you know, magic career or whatever, it's really kind of cool and ironic how they got David Copperfield, the magician rather, to play a magician in this movie. It's just like perfect casting, and like I say, it's right towards the beginning of his, you know, magic career or whatever, and he's got this assistant, and you know, that's just really kind of a cool character, and they really don't show Kenny Hampson very well. He's kind of, at the beginning of the movie when they play the prank on him, he's obscured with his, you know, his beanie and his scarf and all this and that. So you don't get a very, you know, good glimpse of him. But, you know, the magician, 4 years later, when you know, someone hires a magician to go on this steam train excursion to entertain the kids or the college kids or whatever during the, you know, the train ride or whatever. And it's kind of cool because, you know, the way they present the David Copperfield character as being like, ooh, you know, kind of, he's probably a potential suspect, or maybe he's Kenny, or, you know, who is this mysterious guy or whatever. Later on we find out that no one, in fact, who set up the steam train excursion actually hired a magician, so it's just, it gets even more like, who is this guy or whatever. But one of this movie's, you know, most awesome things that it does, unlike Halloween, which came out just 2 years prior and became all successful and all this and that, is one of these things that's really kind of cool about this movie and really unique. I don't think really many horror movies, especially at the time, maybe probably more have since, if they have at all. But one of the things that's really stands this movie apart from its, you know, its competition, if you will, is the way the killer changes costumes throughout the movie. Like the guy he kills before the train, you know, departs at the beginning of the movie, he takes his costume, and then, you know, he plays the part of that guy, and, you know, the drunk and high, you know, college kids on the train just assume it's that guy. Of course, he's a lot skinnier than the actual guy he killed was, but, you know, when you're drunk and high or whatever, you might not notice that. You just see the costume. But so he takes this Groucho Marx costume and kills someone with that, and the guy Jackson, the black guy, of course, is named Jackson, and he's got some lizard outfit on, so when after he kills him, he takes the lizard outfit. So throughout the course of the movie, he takes like he's in like, I don't know, 3 or 4 different kind of variations of costumes, which are really cool. And the grand finale, he's like in a kind of a mishmash of several characters' costumes. Like he's got Doc's, you know, whatever kind of monk robe on or whatever, and he's got a little, he's wearing like Doc's girlfriend's mask, and then he's got a little bit of the feathers of Jamie Lee Curtis's boyfriend and stuff. So it's like, yeah, it's like, you know, I don't know, maybe 2 or 3.5 costume changes of the killer throughout the course of the movie, which is really cool. It's really kind of hard to review this movie being so freaking familiar with it. Like, I don't need any notes. I mean, a lot of times for a movie that I just saw once or whatever or twice, I'll use notes to better review it. I mean, I don't need any notes for this. It's almost like, well, I mean, that's obviously all in my head or whatever, but it's kind of like, what do I talk about and what do I not talk about? It's kind of interesting. But in addition to Jamie Lee Curtis being in this movie, I think Ben Johnson, I don't know if he's the top billing, but Ben Johnson, of course, is that old Southern character who's been in all kinds of westerns and all kinds of movies before, you know, before this movie came out. He was kind of the, I guess, the star power of this movie, if you will, more or less kind of like the Donald Pleasance of Terror Train, if you will. And like I say, he might be the first billing, and then it might be Jamie Lee Curtis after that, I'm not sure. But ever since I was a kid, I mean, teenager, and I first saw this, I've always liked Ben Johnson's portrayal. You know, just the way he is in this movie just comes across as just an older, just really nice kind of a, he plays a conductor, he's one of the employees on the train, and he's just a really nice presence who, you know, he's kind of the opposite. Instead of, you know, seeing a movie of nothing but drunken high college kids, we get to see like a more mature, you know, character who's, you know, reacts to everything that they're doing or whatever. And you've got a more mature and able-bodied and able person all around to deal with the you know, the horror once, you know, things hit the fan or whatever. And as a matter of fact, he's one of the characters who first sees the fact that someone's been killed early on, and then it's kind of later on revealed that, oh my gosh, you know, when Jackson's killed in his frickin' whatever 20,000, or the creature from the Black Lagoon outfit. He's like, oh my gosh, and then later on he goes to show some other guy, and he's like, all the blood's cleaned up, and he gets, you know, the guy's looking all drunk, and he's getting up, and obviously it's Kenny Hampson now in the costume and stuff, and the movie is just extremely, extremely, extremely well conceived and executed, and a movie that just is so near and dear to my heart. And like being 40 years old now, like the movie now being 40 years old, it's just like holds up like no one's business. As I said in another review I did earlier, or this year, what was it? Screams of a Winter Night. Yeah, movies like this, you know, as the years go on and more crappy movies are being made and released, like these movies just, it's like fine wine. Like, I don't drink alcohol myself, but it's like these movies just get better and better with time, and it's absolutely, oh my gosh, this movie's great. So I think that'll pretty much be my review of the movie. It's you know, we obviously find out that it's, you know, I guess I can, well, I won't spoil all of it if you haven't seen it. I'll just say that they do kind of an interesting thing, which Return to Sleepaway Camp tries to do to lesser of an extent later on. They do something that, you know, kind of a switcheroo kind of the identity of the killer pretty well, and obviously it turns out to be Kenny Hampson, but he might not be who you think he is or whatever. I'll just simply say that you know, obviously Kenny Hampson is the killer, and I do love the guy who plays him, and at the very end of the movie when he confronts Jamie Lee Curtis' character, he's just so badass with that voice and his just squinty evil eyes, and he just looks so badass when he's got Jamie Lee Curtis by the wrists, and he's like, I watched you tonight. You liked him. He's like, no, you're better than he is. I am. I'm doing the rocking for the train. He didn't know how to cut a woman into pieces. But anyway, I could go on and on and on about Terror Train. It's absolutely a movie I just hold in such high regard. As I said, it gets better and better every year, and ages like a fine wine. An obvious 4 out of 4 stars. Absolutely favorite of mine. I can't say enough about Terror Train, and it's, you know, I know that there are some like tracks of the score on YouTube, and I've since downloaded them years ago and stuff, but I wish there'd be like a whole, I don't know if there is, not that I'm aware of, a whole kind of score released somehow, like on vinyl, that someone could be kind to rip and upload to YouTube or whatever. But I'm not exactly sure where the bits of score that are on YouTube came from. But I'm grateful for whatever score is on YouTube now and that I've since downloaded. But this movie is just an absolute must-see movie if you like early 80s slashers and Jamie Lee Curtis at the prime of her Scream Queen era and stuff, before the mainstream kind of stole her from horror movies and stuff, and she would never, well, I guess I was going to say never to return. Well, that changed, I guess, when she did H2O and then Halloween 2018 and all these kind of movies. But onto my review of the Scorpion, the most recent release of this on Blu-ray. Scorpion released Blu-ray of Terror Train with newly commissioned cover art here. I don't know if you can still get these or not, but this one, of course, is one with the cover, or the slipcase. As always, I'll show the back so you can see the special features. The things that are basically new to this version that are different than the Scream Factory one is you've got a brand new 2K scan of what they're calling the original Inter-Negative with additional restoration work done, and brand new on-camera interview with director Roger Spottiswoode, or Woody, or however the hell you say it, and then brand new on-camera interview with writer Judith Rasco, and then everything else on here, interview with production executive and all these other stuff, are just ports from that were featured on the Scream Factory Blu-ray release of Terror Train, which is now out of print from what I understand. So what I will say about this transfer right off the bat was really disappointing, because ever since I first seen this movie when I was 15 from this version here, which is the original VHS from Key Video, but as a 20th Century Fox distributed this movie in North America. So every time I watch this movie, ever since I first saw it on video, VHS, it's always had that wonderful, late 70s, early 80s, 20th Century Fox logo with just silent. It didn't have the music. It was just silent, and then it would fade into the music at the with the fraternity thing at the beginning of the movie. And that was, it was this way on the DVD that came out, the first Blu-ray. So right off the bat, when I saw this, I was disappointed, because all of a sudden that's the way I've known this movie my whole life, has been replaced with the United Artists. And it's probably because it's maybe an international print or something that they used for this transfer. The Fox logo is gone, and now it's just a silent United Artists logo from the late 70s, early 80s. And it's just like, oh man, that was kind of a bummer. And even still now, I mean, let's face it, I mean, it's so funny how a logo can make that big a difference to you. But when you basically grew up with the movie, and the whole time you've watched it, it was that beautiful grainy 20th Century Fox logo that fades in and fades out before the movie starts. It's really kind of a shock when it's on this version it's no longer there. That's my biggest complaint about this release, is that being a North American fan of this movie, that logo is now gone. But I guess it only lasts a couple seconds, but it's just like, oh my gosh. I debated for months whether I should get this or not, but since it's one of my favorite movies and I was just curious about the new transfer, I basically just went for it and did it, obviously. But I will recommend to people that already own the Scream Factory Blu-ray, my advice would be not to bother with it, because you can't really even tell the difference between this one, with the exception of those logos being changed, or the Scream Factory one. The Scream Factory one had a lot of specks and dots and artifacts and stuff, which I don't really mind, but it's like this one has the exact same thing, almost as if it's the same film elements, just just used again, or even maybe the same scan. The only thing that would indicate to me that this is in fact a new scan is, of course, that the United Artists logo being at the beginning instead of the Fox logo. And also some of the real changes seem to be a little more evident in this scan versus the Scream Factory ones, where they're a little more, I mean, they don't distract or anything. I don't think there's any missing film per se, but some of the real changes are a little more, I'll just say that, they're just a little more evident than they are on the Scream Factory release. other than that, I mean, it looks basically exactly the same, and even the kind of the white dots and all the artifacts that permeate a lot of the movie, or the beginning of maybe reels or the end of reels and stuff like that. I mean, it seems like pretty much the exact same transfer that was on the Scream Factory one. So if you're looking, or if you're hoping for something that's completely, completely more improved or better than the Scream Factory one, I mean, it's really not. I mean, it's basically, from what I can see, pretty much identical to the Scream Factory release, but I mean, since that one's out of print, this one might be a more affordable option. Obviously, I did appreciate finally hearing from the director. The ironic thing about the release of the Scream Factory one years ago is, I think when that Blu-ray release was announced, I think they had actually said initially that there was going to be a commentary with the director, which turned out to not be the case. I hope it doesn't say. No, it doesn't say there's but I think when this release was announced, they said they had a commentary with, Roger Spottiswoode or Woody, or however the hell you say his name or whatever. So that was kind of a disappointment. So it is, that's one of the cool things about this release, is that we actually get a chance to hear from him, to talk about it. And it's really cool because most of the stuff he talks about is really how, John Alcott, and how, how he worked as a cinematographer, just taking light readings from the back of his hand and things like that, and looking at the back of his hand and saying, no, we need a little more light. Things like that. It was really interesting because, let's face it, I mean, one of the things that I'm most interested about, really like about this movie is the way it looks, and that the revolutionary and amazing cinematographer John Alcott actually shot this movie. So it was really cool to hear from the director, so much about, the cinematographer and how he worked in this, while they made this movie. The additional interviews, which are the director and this, the writer of Judith Roscoe or whatever, I mean, they are good, and it was nice to have them in addition to the other special features that were ported over from the Scream Factory release. But like I say, I mean, the image is you're really not going to notice, or I didn't really notice a difference between this and the Scream Factory release. And it's really ironic because so then after I got this is the first DVD that came out of it, or I guess I should say first and only standalone DVD in North America. This came out in, I'm not exactly sure when, was it 2004. And this is really cool because it's a double-sided, so you've got like full screen and wide, anamorphic widescreen on the other side. And it's really funny because I haven't watched this for a long time. So like after I got this recently, this year or whatever, I put this in, and it's just like, I remember that it's really ironic because this is, out of all the versions of this movie available on disc, this is ultimately the best version. The two Blu-ray versions have all kinds of artifacts and specs. I was really amazed. I hadn't put this in since probably I got, the first Scream Factory Blu-ray, and I was amazed at how clean it is. So the irony is, if you want if you don't like artifacts and you don't like all kinds of dirty print stuff in that, the best way to see this movie is on disc is probably this version, where it's the most clean version. This is actually put out by 20th Century Fox in 2004. This is probably, it's obviously not HD, but if if artifacts and that kind of stuff bug you, this is actually going to be the cleanest print, ironically. And I think that's just really weird. It's just like, if they could get a clean print for this in 2004, like, where did that print go for this one, and where did that print go for this one? And the fact that both of the prints on these two releases are so similar, I'm going to just go out on a limb and just say that it's very, very likely that the scan, even though they say it's a new 2K scan, I mean, it's very likely that the scan on the new Blu-ray is just, the scan from the frickin' Scream Factory Blu-ray. But obviously not being in the biz or anything like that, there's no way for me to confirm that. But as I said, the fact that you've got an alternate, the United Artists logo instead of the Fox logo at the beginning, maybe would indicate that it is a different print or different elements. But how come they look so similar with all the the white specks and artifacts? That's the only question that I really have in regards to the new 2K remaster. So it's I've said it before in reviews past and stuff, I don't really mind the artifacts, and I kind of like them. It kind of adds to that midnight screening, grindhouse aspect, aspect to the release. But at the same time, when I popped in that old 20th Century Fox DVD recently and looked at that, I'm like, wow, as much as the artifacts are kind of fun or whatever on the Blu-ray releases, like this DVD looks really good without them, really clean and really like a pristine transfer. So it's kind of an interesting situation with the Terror Train on disc. Like I say, the standard definition DVD from '04 is ultimately the cleanest version, but then to go HD with this title, you've got to have like all kinds of artifacts and specs, which, like I say, don't really bother me, but for some it might bother them. So in regards to the Blu-ray packaging, of course, this one that I got's got the slipcase, but if you take the slipcase off, you will find the same newly commissioned goofy artwork with the purple haze there, of course, in the same back as you got on the exterior of the slipcase. But like so many releases like this, you do have the option for the reversible cover art. So you've got the option for this newly commissioned cover art, or this artwork, which of course I, like a lot much more. This is the original theatrical poster artwork. Unfortunately, it's really, really dark compared to, I actually own the original theatrical poster, and this rendition of it is a lot more dark than the actual poster is, but obviously I keep this artwork facing out and, underneath the slipcase because it's obviously so much better than the newly commissioned cover art in my opinion. And then when you open up the case, I don't know if if they still offer the mini poster on releases anymore, but with the release that I got with the slipcover, you've got a mini poster which I'll show you in a moment. And I really, really like the artwork on the disc, which I think is like foreign poster art, which is really, really, really kind of cool. So I really, really like. I'm not the biggest fan of the newly commissioned artwork, but I really like the presumably foreign poster artwork that they use for the disc. Like I say, my slipcover version comes with this mini poster, which looks like this when you unfold it. Not the hugest poster in the world, just a mini poster, or a micro poster, if you will. And unfortunately, they don't have the original poster or anything on the back. It's just nothing. But this is the, of course, goofy ass Purple Mist newly commissioned cover art for the release, which I think on the whole the newly commissioned cover art is fine. It's just my only gripe is the Purple Mist and the I'd go with a red font versus the yellow font, but oh well. So I think that'll pretty much do it for this review of Terror Train movie and recently released Blu-ray from Scorpion Releasing. Thank you very much for watching this video, and as always, we'll catch you on the next one.